the terrible toddlers, even
Yeah.
kids.
So what is the terrible twos? So I had a quick research about this, and it literally just is a period in a child's social development which is associated with very defiant and unruly behavior.
Yes,
Hmm.
I
So,
completely agree with that.
but I think it's an important stage. So,
Oh yeah.
the terrible twos is a time when toddlers start to develop their social skills. And we know this, and this is why I think school is so important, because as much as you try and socialize your child at home, especially an only child, even a child that has siblings, it's different to when you go to school and you're being taught social skills at school.
Yeah.
You know, they become more aware of their place in the world, and then they begin to interact with others. So they're still grappling on how to share, taking turns, and understanding empathy, which leads to conflicts and power struggles with their peers. So,
Yes.
yeah, they're just learning, and it's so difficult to try and have to train them into what we say society is we're supposed to be.
Yes. And this is the whole thing. I also looked it up, and it does say that it starts at 18 months. Okay.
Oh.
So it's not
Mm-hmm.
just terrible twos. It's actually like a terrible growth stage. And the reason why toddlers have these tantrums also is because they don't know how to express themselves yet. So no wonder when they try and express themselves, they don't know how to show and they get frustrated. It's just like an adult, right? So I did some
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
research. So there is something called co-regulation, right? So co-regulation is,
Co-regulation.
yes, co-regulation. It's a process
Mm-hmm.
before you can let yourself have self-regulation. Co-regulation is an interpersonal process in which participants continuously adjust their interaction in coordination pattern to create and maintain a positive emotional state. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
how does this relate? Is that when you are doing it as a parent, we kind of need to be able to regulate our emotions when we are dealing with little people because they tend to feed off that, right? So they always say that you need to regulate
Mm-hmm.
yourself so that your little one can start to understand their own emotions. And so here,
Easier said than done.
yes. And so I messaged you about this because I was like, oh, there's so much stuff that I've done. And I feel like I'm such a bad parent because there are times where I don't self regulate and I
Mm-hmm.
react because I'm
Mm-hmm.
irritated as well. And it's hard to be patient with a toddler when they're constantly crying. So it is
But what parent can self-regulate their emotions all the time?
yes. So
That's not normal, right?
just to put it out there for this podcast, we're not saying you have to be a perfect parent and be always on
Mm-hmm.
point with all these things. But I thought it'll be a nice thing to talk about because I really struggled with this with Kira, not self-regulation, but another thing. And I have made it a big and bold in my notes.
It's like the number one rule that therapists always go back to. Oh, talk about your childhood, talk about this, talk about that, right? Because normally it stems from when you are a child.
Yes. So
Mm-hmm.
co-regulations with parents is like teaching a child how to ride a bike. And I really like this. So I'm going to read this to you. And in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
a young child is simply sits there while the parent does all the work, holding up the bike, pushing forward, um, but soon the child gets used to balancing on the bike. They start pedaling and balancing on their own. At some point, the parent can let go. Holding up the bike at the beginning is essential for a child to learn how to ride a bike. Without the parent, the
Mm-hmm.
child will likely fall and get hurt. When it becomes too much, they may give up. Teaching them how to ride a bike because they can't do it on their own. You can't just be like, here's a bike and go do it. So it's kind of
Yeah.
teaching them how to deal with their emotions by you also showing them how to deal with it.
And that's what they say, like 2-year-olds get 2 to 3-year-olds or toddlers, let's just say toddlers, they get frustrated. So
Yeah.
put yourself in a toddler situation and think, one, they want to be able to put on their own clothes, but they
Mm.
can't. Okay, how annoying would that be? They want to be able to explain why they're sad, but they can't.
Yeah.
They want to see how plugs work, like just a plug socket, right? But they can't. Okay. They need to be heard over other siblings, but they can't. Maybe not just siblings, maybe other peers at school. These are all things that they want to be able to do, but they're not capable of doing them. So we can all relate to that as adults. It's very, very frustrating.
Yes.
So it must be even more frustrating for them if they're frustrated and they can't communicate about why they're frustrated.
Yes. So
yeah,
that's the whole reason. And I didn't know this because I didn't even know that this was going to be an issue. Kira is such a social child. I was like, I'm not going to have any issues. She gets on with everybody. And then the first week there, it was just come in, apologize to the other parents about your child's behavior. And she was scratching, if she couldn't bite, she would scratch.
I was in the office the other day and I remember someone came up to you and they said that they'd seen your child and she was outside playing, and they said, oh, I saw Kira the other day, we saw her backpack, and then there she was outside and she was running around and she was barefoot. Barefoot. Like it was like that was a problem or the main focus. Like, who cares? Like kids run around
I was
barefoot.
like, okay, thank you.
Yeah, that just stood out to me a little bit. But also in England, I remember going to a party and there was like loads of families there and kids there. You know how they all play together. And there was this boy and girl and they were like the same age and they were dressed in their party outfits and they were hugging each other. And everyone was like, oh, look. And then the girl went to give the boy a kiss and she was kissing his cheek and everyone was like, and then the boy starts crying and no one knows why. And then we couldn't get the girl off the boy. And then when we got her off, this big teeth mark was in the side of his cheek. And the parents were a little angry, but they understood, but they weren't happy. And she just started kissing him and got so excited. And she was just
bit him.
And then started sucking him and biting him. And it left a big mark on the side of his face.
Yeah, these things happen. Like, I don't know how to, we also have someone at work. His child gets so excited and bites him. Only him. No one else. And like, of course.
He likes to bite his dad's ears.
And of course he does say like, oh, it's not okay, but it's not because they're angry. They're just doing it to show emotions. So they say like, for a parent, we need to try and stay positive. When we talk to our kids, we don't shame them. It's very hard, but I know
it's so hard.
As I was trying to explain it to like anybody who asks me about it, it's something that you have to try be positive, and it is difficult to stay calm. I know you have to take deep breaths.
I'm not coming from a mother's perspective either. I'm coming from like a mother to be, an auntie, and also a teacher who has worked with 2-year-olds up to 16-year-olds and adults. But so I know I've worked with kids for over 10 years. And it's hard to stay positive.
Yeah.
I've just started teaching grade 1 in our job, one of my classes that I teach. And I forgot how little they can do. So I went into the classroom. I was like, okay, get your red folders out. And they're like, what's a red folder? And I'm like, this, your red folder, get it out. And they get it out. And I'm like, right, I'm going to give you your thematic dialogue. And I want you to put it inside your red folder. And then they're like, huh? And they can't open the folder and put a piece of paper in.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what's wrong with you? What, put the paper in? And then there was so many of them. They just didn't have the motor skills to do that, or have never had the opportunity to do that. Like maybe someone's been doing it for them, learned helplessness, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. So it took me like 10 minutes. It took me 10 minutes to do things that would have taken 2 minutes. And then that requires patience. And then what requires patience? I'll tell you what requires patience. Patience requires energy. You have to have a lot of energy to be patient. And then when you're constantly being patient, your energy is running low and lower and lower and lower. And then it's harder to want to do anything.
Yeah.
Right? It's
true.
Tiring being patient.
And then you just like, I don't know. Sometimes my patience is not good. Like I told you the other day, Kira screamed on top of her voice. And I know I shouldn't have done it. And then I screamed on top of my voice and she got like really a fright, like, Mommy, why would you do that? And I said, do you like that? Does it hurt your ears? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, well, you hurt my ears. And I know.
You have a goat in the background. He looks like a little billy goat.
I'm like, oh no, is he on the table?
Yeah, he's just
yeah,
like watching.
I know
Oh,
these
it's so
dogs
cute.
right now, they're like going crazy. I
He
don't
really
know.
looks like the Jack Russell from The Mask, the Jim
He
Carrey
does.
mask. But yeah, he really does.